This episode of Nintendo Expansion Pass is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support Nintendo Pop Like and the Boss Rush Network, head on over to our Patreon at patreon.com/Boss Rush Network and see which tier is right for you. Thanks for your continued support. Hello everybody, welcome to Nintendo Expansion Pass here on Boss Rush Games. I'm your host and I'm excited to joining me is the one, the only Bossman himself, Mr. Corey Dirrig. Hello, good sir. Yes.
Hello. How is it going?
It is going great on this Monday that I was off. So excited to be off before I get into a whirlwind of nonsense.
Makes one of us. I'm just kidding. Maybe.
But we do have a great topic.
Do we?
Corey. Yes, we actually do. Tonight we're going to be talking about, well, should I say this episode, not tonight. This episode, has Nintendo brought gamers back to the platform for good? With the Nintendo Switch, we know people feel like they kind of lost out what Nintendo was, started with the GameCube and definitely with the Wii and this casual concept in games. You know, people were just like, do we want motion control or not? So even though the Wii opened up a lot of doors, at the time, hardcore gamers, in quotations, wasn't feeling what Nintendo was dishing out. And then when the Wii U hit, people still weren't feeling Nintendo. Well, I should say a certain age weren't feeling Nintendo at the time because it seemed that gaming had matured and it was for people who were 18 and older when it was all about Call of Duty and Grand Theft Auto and things of that nature. But when Nintendo Switch came, it brought in, at this time of recording, 140 million owners of the console and growing. So I was wondering, are people kind of looking at Nintendo like, oh, this is the place to be at for games?
Well, so let's go back to the initial question, right? Has Nintendo brought gamers back to the platform for good? I don't know is the answer. I don't know if we'll know until the next platform releases. I do, however, want to say that if you would have asked me this 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said, if a platform has great games, the gamers will come. It doesn't matter what the platform is. But we all know that's not true, right? The Wii U had some amazing games and nobody bought it. The Xbox One has some great games. Nobody bought it. The Xbox Series consoles have great games and nobody is buying it. I mean, again, Microsoft's strategy this generation is a little bit different than, it has been in the past. But, from that Take-Two earnings call as of February, which is when we're recording this, PlayStation has sold about 54 million units in the PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series consoles collectively have sold about 22 million. And that's not, in terms of console sales. Again, Microsoft's strategy is different this time around, but still, the console has great games and Game Pass, and it's still not selling. So the truth is, I don't know because Nintendo obviously carries a lot of nostalgia with it. You know, hardcore people who grew up with Nintendo probably came back to the Switch because they now have kids that enjoy games, or they missed, that, they wanted that hit of nostalgia, or again, Nintendo does make great games, and maybe that's why people came back, but I don't know if great games is the only answer. Another before you go,
Mhm.
another thing is Nintendo has always done well in the handheld space. And I think, what we've been talking about for the last 7 years on this show is that Nintendo focusing on one platform instead of three, right? You had the Wii U, the 3DS, and then mobile for a little bit, right?
Mhm.
They're now only focused on one platform, and they're able to deliver a consistent a consistent amount of games, whether it's a new game, a remake, a remaster, a port, something, right? And they've obviously succeeded with this concept of the handheld that you can plug into your TV. So much so that you're starting to see other companies kind of, I don't want to say copy, but they're imitating, right? Like the
Mhm.
Steam Deck. Okay, everybody has a computer. Everybody probably has some sort of Steam library, like whether it's, 300 games or 5 games, right? Like so everybody has some sort of Steam library. Well, you can take those games with you now. The ROG Ally, same thing. With the Armory Crate, you can play Game Pass games. You can play uh, Epic Game Store games, Steam games, anything that has a launcher, you can throw on there and play it. And now we're hearing rumors that Microsoft wants to make a compatible handheld with Xbox consoles. PlayStation is heavily rumored to be making another handheld again. But I think the fact that the handheld needs to pair with either an existing library, or be the console itself, like Nintendo has done, and Steam Deck to an extent, um, is why I think these consoles are so compelling. But at the same time, I think the next console that Nintendo puts out, whether it's an iteration on the Switch or something else, which by all accounts, it's another hybrid style console where your library will carry over, I think that's going to benefit it greatly in terms of being successful. So, has Nintendo brought gamers back? I don't know. I think it's a wait and see thing, but they've definitely succeeded in bringing them to this console for a multitude of reasons.
For me, I think they have brought them back for good. Because it's you mentioned great games. It's this is one of Nintendo's strongest libraries. It Indie's got a good spot on it. Third party and their ports putting games on it, getting results that they are happy to see. I think Nintendo, if we're just speaking about them alone, with the marketing of the amiibos, marketing, um, with the OLED and the light, and just showing people how easy it is. The Pro Controller, how you could take your game on the go and then continue it, like when you put it on the dock, it goes on your big screen. I think they really were able to bring people into their into their ecosystem and be like, hey, we got games for everybody. Yes, we know you want to play your mature games. We know that you might think our games are arcadey, but look at the stuff that's selling on our system from us. Look at, Astral Chain. Look at Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is still doing numbers, and people are still talking about maybe one of the best Switch games of all time on the system. The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild, and Tears of the Kingdom doing numbers, just like Mario Kart 8 hitting like half of the sales of the system itself with 60 million and growing. Uh, Nintendo really just showcased that, hey, you guys could play our games whether at home or on the go. If you here, take the Joy Cons out, pass it to your friends, and control it. It's been, I think they brought them back because, of course, of the great games, but their marketing literally has been strong. Um, their Nintendo Directs have been, whether some people want to say hit or misses, they have more hits with the Nintendo Direct than they have misses, because everybody, when they got something unexpected as a game, people were going to be like, "Oh, I'm planning to get it." Uh, Pre-orders really jumped up for Nintendo from gamers. Like, if you wanted your physical copy, people were already pre-ordering it, and then pre-orders became a big thing also on the digital space. When Nintendo introduced the vouchers, people were been buying vouchers and get ready for those games and stuff. Like, just look at the way that Link's Awakening, when that got previewed, and how people lost their mind. And then you see the numbers that it's doing. Square Enix putting out Octopath Traveler and Dragon Quest, and people purchasing those games. Like, Nintendo, of course, by the time you guys see this, the news that they're the richest company in Japan, having $11 billion in cash. You know, like, that really showcased how hard Nintendo been working this era to bring gamers back to their platform. Um, and everything. And I think that's why you see the success of the Nintendo Switch, and you see why gamers are anticipating Nintendo's next system, because the current Switch has been successful and showing that this is how gaming could work in the future on handheld and on TV and everything. So I literally think they brought them back for good. I think more people are going to continue to invest in Nintendo games, even if they got, get the power that everybody say that they need to have. If they deliver the power, I feel like definitely from Japan, those Japanese games are going to come. Nintendo's still going to deliver some great games, and physical is just still going to continue to be the thing for that system. Um,
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dirrig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network. I think the Switch was a surprise to a lot of people, right? I think a lot of people like the Switch for one reason or another, but I think it was a surprise for a lot of people, and I think there's a few things that you have to do to keep players in your ecosystem, right? I mean, that's the big buzzword now. And I know Nintendo doesn't care about buzzwords or, what other companies are doing.
mm-hmm.
But I think there are certain things they have to do on the next console to at least have people pay attention, right? At least they have to pay attention to the other consoles for, I would say. One, their online functionality has to be better. Playing online has to be better, right? Smash Brothers was a mess at launch. Mario Kart 8 is a mess all the time. Splatoon, at least early on, like, the online connections were terrible. I remember seeing, our friends say, "Man, I want to play Splatoon online, but I can't right now because the servers are messed up, or I can't get into a lobby because the internet stuff just doesn't work correctly."
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just that. It's like, making your Nintendo Switch ID more pronounced across the console, across the Nintendo ecosystem. I know that word is kind of annoying to people, including me, but like, that's got to be that has to be part of their focus. It doesn't have to be the whole focus. It doesn't even have to be their primary focus, but it has to be a focus Um, I think the Nintendo Switch store is terrible. I think the eShop is terrible. I think everybody kind of agrees that the eShop is terrible. It's gotten better over time,
Mm-hmm.
but I still think the Wii U's eShop was probably their best effort at least organization and where you can find certain things. They had a whole section for indies. They had a whole section for first party games. They had sectioned off by characters. The Wii's virtual console was pretty good. Um, so those things I think they need to. Those are like the three things I think they need to adjust. Better online play, make your Switch ID more pronounced, and let you like actually see other thing like what your friends are doing. Uh, I think friend codes need to go away. Personally, I don't know how integrated those are into their Nintendo Switch IDs moving forward, but they
Mm-hmm.
are kind of annoying. Um, Although don't I don't really care about it anymore. It's just annoying. I would rather just go up to somebody and give them my ID instead of my Switch friend code, right? Um, I do think they do a lot of things well, though. I think their NSO service is awesome. It's organized well. It's updated pretty regularly. Although, obviously NES and SNES aren't as updated as they were at the beginning. Um, I think that stuff's great. And if you are, and the thing that bothers me the most is that people complain about that service. It's $50 a year. I'm like, oh my gosh, you're paying $200 a year for PlayStation Network. And it's like, I get it. You get this big library of games with it and online service, but like, I don't know, $50 seems kind of cheap to me for the expansion pass version of it. I
Mm-hmm.
also think what's nice is that most of the games that have expansions, the expansions are added to NSO, right? Maybe not
Yes.
right away, but the Mario Kart DLC was added to NSO for free if you subscribe to the expansion pass. The Animal Crossing coffee shop edition, whatever that was, was added to NSO. Splatoon 2's the expansion. I almost said Octopath. Octopath. Uh, the Octo expansion was added. Anyways, we had another technical issue. Man, Zencaster is so full of technical. Gosh, there's got to be a better service. Like, I don't know if I need to look around or what, but man, Zencaster is just.
Not doing it.
Ugh. Anyways, what I was trying to say before our technical hiccup was that I think NSO has a great foundation. I think what they're doing with Nintendo Switch Online with a mixture of free games like Tetris 99 and F-Zero
Mm-hmm.
99, Mario 35, right? They're doing some really good things. I think now with the next system, especially, you have to focus on the other things to make your online. It doesn't have to be Xbox Live, but it needs to be serviceable and it needs to be legible and your online profile needs to be relevant to your online play.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so that's my thing. I know Nintendo's always going to be more about the single player experience or the couch co-op experience, but they have to realize that, especially with the Switch and your ability to connect with other players mobilely, that you have to fix that connectivity issue. And Um, I hope that that's one thing that they work on and fix, because especially if like your digital library is coming forward with you, your physical library is somewhat backward compatible, like, supposedly, they have to figure that stuff out. And if they can do that and they can keep, if they allow people to keep their libraries moving forward the way that Xbox is doing and PlayStation is, sort of doing. I say sort of because of it's only PlayStation 4 and 5,
Mm-hmm.
where Xbox is really trying to do all 4 generations, 5 generations, however many Xboxes there are. if Nintendo can do that with your Switch library moving forward, with their NSO expansion pass subscription service and giving you free games and fixing their online stuff and fixing their store, I don't know if anybody offers a better overall experience than I don't know if anybody offers a better experience than Nintendo. I think if they fix those things, right? I think their library is clearly stronger than Xbox's. I'm sorry, it is. I think depending on the game type of games you like, their library could arguably be stronger than Sony's. They have more games coming out than both of those consoles combined, first party wise.
Yeah.
So the quality keeps coming. You know, I would say internal Nintendo quality is coming. You could argue about their sports games and Mario Party and those types of games, right? But their main attraction, their Mario games, their Zelda games, Metroid, Donkey Kong to an extent, their offerings are great. And I don't know if anybody does it better. And I don't know if anybody will ever do it better as long as Nintendo is Nintendo, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is true. That is true. Um, and I know they're going to have an uphill battle with their next console because we. This is the thing you got. Some people got to realize. PC players, and yes, I got to talk about the PC players. They already feel like they're getting that same Switch experience with their Steam Deck, and because games can run on it better, and they got this full library of third party and indie games, that they feel like they won't have a need for like Nintendo. Since Microsoft is bringing their games to Steam, PlayStation is bringing their games to Steam. They could get that full experience of a console player through their PC. And it just seems that Nintendo themselves, because of the technology they decide to go with, is not pulling them in. But I think a lot of PC players are missing the games that, from a Nintendo perspective and from them as a first party, on why they are so beloved and why they're selling a million plus, and why sometimes some games are being exclusive and not going anywhere. Like you can't get Fire Emblem Three Houses on Steam or PC, and what is the equivalent to that? You know, Hades had been on Epic Games on PC for years, yeah, but early access, and they didn't really fully get the game in recognition, in my opinion. This is just my opinion, until that mug hit Switch. Because when Hades hit Switch, that's when Hades was getting Game of the Year nominations
Mm-hmm.
and winning. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was going to say, to your point, I would argue the only major franchise that, well, there are probably others, but the only major franchise I can think of off the top of my head that Nintendo isn't getting, new entries in is Final Fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that will hopefully change too with this, this next console that's more powerful and has the right, you know, this console may have the ability to have them kind of downgrade current gen versions of games easier, right? I think,
Yeah.
because I mean, even there's an article as recently as December that's said that Square is working on like the Final Fantasy VII remake, the first one might be a launch title for the next console, which, granted 2 years late, but also like that would be a pretty big launch title for a Nintendo console, right? And we talked a little bit about it on, I don't remember if it was PAL Block or an
It's Power
expansion
Block.
pass,
It's Power
but I
Block.
think Nintendo sees the hype around Final Fantasy VII right now. And, Nintendo would never admit it because Nintendo is Nintendo and they're very prideful and they have franchises that, like, they've obviously lived without Final Fantasy this long. like, what's another generation? But I think they look at the hype around Final Fantasy right now and they're like, man, we wish we had something that could handle this because it's such in the zeitgeist.
But I think Nintendo is fine not having Final Fantasy,
Well,
and
that's
the
what
reason,
that's what I'm saying. They've survived this long without Final
well,
Fantasy, and
well,
of
well,
course the console's going to be fine without it. But I think they I wonder if Nintendo's feeling any FOMO from this.
no. To actually tell you the truth, no. I think what happened, I, it's the transition between Nintendo and Square. Yes, PlayStation has become the home of Final Fantasy. That's great and all, but Final Fantasy wasn't started to lose its popularity with Final Fantasy 13. People didn't understand Final Fantasy 12. Yeah, Final Fantasy 10 was good and everything, but that was kind of like the last one. And when Final Fantasy was trying to find its footing and stuff, Square Enix was also trying to find out what works because Dragon Quest 8, that was big in Japan but really became niche until Dragon Quest the remakes, and then Dragon Quest 9 hit 3DS. Like when Square got back with Nintendo and we started getting like Bravely Default 2 and some of their other games and stuff, people started recognizing the Square that they missed in the past that was making them money and stuff. So when we got to the Switch generation, because we didn't really get Square Enix on Wii U, like Deus Ex, like Human Revolution, like we didn't really get that much representation, which is fine. But when Switch came and we got Octopath Traveler 1 and 2, Harvest Stellar, um, we got the Final Fantasy collection. But when the Square Enix starts putting out these small games and it was making the money like Voice of Cards and stuff like that, when Square Enix started seeing more money come from Nintendo and everybody had to wait for stuff for PlayStation and Xbox for Square Enix caught on to be like, oh, we will make a lot of money from Nintendo than any other company. When
Yeah,
Cloud
but
came,
half those games didn't even sell 500,000 units. So,
which is fine, but their game those games weren't closing studios. Forsaken
some of
came
them did.
out. Oh well, yeah. Forspoken
Tokyo
came.
RPG factory closed down, and their games were on every console. So,
I thought they were still open.
no, they shut them down.
They should have now. Um, Well, I know that it just felt like when Square Enix got more visibility on Switch than any other console. So I think them missing out on Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth is completely fine because I think there's some other stuff that could take up that place. Look, Alice is giving Square Enix a run for its money. And regardless of what you think of Shin
That's true.
Megami, Persona, you cannot lie that Atlas, who was putting out niche games that no one really knowed and paid attention to on PlayStation 1 and 2, started to become really big. Once they got with Sega, it was crazy. We
Did
didn't.
they?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but to go back to the Atlas stuff, did they confirm that Metaphor ReFantasia was coming to Switch, or did they hint at it coming to the next console?
No, right now it's just only Xbox and I guess PS5 is coming out too. But they didn't say nothing about it coming to Switch or anything.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay. I just because I mean, if you could somehow in the launch window um have Metaphor and Persona 3 Reload,
mhm,
right? And I don't know. Like I mean, especially if you're not getting Final Fantasy, which I don't know if they are or not. That was just a rumor that was flying around, and I
yeah,
think that would be a great get for them. Would be at least that first part of Final Fantasy Remake. But if you could somehow line those up in a launch window,
mhm,
especially if you could get the rights to the uh, Persona 3 Reload, whatever their second edition is, right? Whatever their
Yeah,
royal edition or their golden edition is, like, and have that bundled in and have it as either a timed exclusive or Nintendo has the marketing for it or something. Like,
yeah.
that would be pretty big for the next console, right?
I
Especially because Atlas is like, sorry, I'm almost done. Especially because like Persona has like really grabbed the attention of a lot of people.
It has, but I think Nintendo would be smarter to actually get the exclusive for Persona 1 and 2 to be remade because no one played those games.
Well,
Like no
Persona
one
1 is seemingly getting a remake, supposedly. A full
I
on remake.
I heard that, but like both of those games are like completely so out there and so weird and stuff. And I think if Nintendo could get the exclusives to those, that's going to be a big thing not only for Atlas but for Nintendo themselves. Like people going to be like, okay, now we're into it because now Atlas has become such a bigger name, and I'm sorry, Square Enix, but they have become such a bigger name for role playing gamers. It's almost they could put a game out and it's guaranteed to get good review scores and good talk and good sales and everything. You know, and even if the sales aren't big, Atlas is still in the discussions of being one of the best companies around developers and stuff. This is helping Sega get back to being a recognizable name. That's recognizable name that isn't a joke or just Sonic related. It's really helping Sega become visible to be like, oh, Sega's not playing around. They went third party. They had their ups and downs, and because of Nintendo, they've been able to stay afloat. But now, dude, they got good business with Microsoft. They're doing okay and well on PlayStation, definitely with like Yakuza. But like Sega got it good getting their name back because of Nintendo. Their relationship with Nintendo ever since Dreamcast got shut down and they went third party has always been strong and everything. And it always kept them afloat where they don't have to keep making pachinko games and stuff. So, like, I think with their next system, and I think that's why the Switch bringing people in to this console, showing that we do have the goods. And, of course, the way that graphics are going to be shown and everything, frame rates and all of that stuff, yeah, it's going to be some ups and downs with it, but that's still every console, regardless. I'm
Yeah. Well, I
Xbox.
we
Oh, go ahead.
no, the, the one thing that sorry, a thought just popped into my head when you said this has to go with the other consoles too, or has to do with the other consoles too, is like you look at you look at Sony, they don't have any internal first party major franchises coming out this year at all. And look how long it's taken Microsoft to put games out, with
Mm-hmm.
their internal studios, so much so that they now have 38 studios and their goal is to put out one game a quarter. And then you look at Nintendo and their output, right? And this all comes back to, and this is why I think the next console is going to be successful also, right? Nintendo knows how to output and put out games, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ever since, this entire generation, they've learned they're like running like a finely tuned machine. They know how to put out games at a cadence that people will want them. Every 4 to 6 weeks you get a new Nintendo first party game. Not a new game necessarily, but a remake, a remaster, a new game, a side project, a spinoff. Something comes out every 4 to 6 weeks. It has been that way since launch, except for the COVID year. I just made a list of like important games that have come to the Switch since launch, and this is something I want to do for a future episode. I'm not going to go through it right now, but like I'm looking at these lists. There's like 20 or 25 games every year that, like, if this was the only platform that I owned, I would still be trying to plug through these games, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
just like it's crazy. And like I've like thought about it. I'm like, man, if I could only have one console, Nintendo would be it, you know? It,
The, oh, sorry, go ahead. I went.
and you know, in during the Wii U era, I don't know if I would have said that. I mean, obviously my games love and have time to play and the way I play games has changed over the last few years, right? Like, I mean, I used to say I don't know if I would own a console that doesn't have Destiny on it. Well, like now, I mean, the way I play Destiny has changed, and like maybe I would just kind of say I'm ready to be done, you know, and I think Nintendo has recaptured at least the imagination of gamers. If
Mm-hmm.
they don't, you know, we got a new 2D Metroid that pulled someone like LeBron in, right? Or, you know, we've gotten Persona, which has dragged the JRPG people in with games like, you know, not only Persona, but even the Square output, like you said, like the pixel remasters of Final Fantasy and Bravely Default 2 and, you
Octopath
know,
Traveler and
Octopath, especially, and Live Alive, and you have, and also Xenoblade. Like Xenoblade has become this massive
that
hit for Nintendo, you
that's what
know?
I was about to that's what I was about to bring up. Like if we talk about the probably the biggest production outside of Tears of the Kingdom and even Breath of the Wild, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, just like yes, they're not
Mhm,
it's more animated and but there's like voice acting, there's narrative, there's story, and they're dealing with dark themes and things like that. Like the stuff that
mhm.
people wanted. You wanted Nintendo to have some adult, mature stuff. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3 have mostly 3 deals with that stuff. And
Mhm.
it's just like out of out of every out of the mature stuff that the other companies put out, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 will have you running through emotions up and down, surprising you left and right, giving you stories that I can't believe Nintendo allowed this. Like, wait, what? Stuff that's just in the game, and I can't spoil anything until people play. You will put your controller down and just have your mouth agape because of what you're viewing and everything,
Mhm.
and then you'll get back to the gameplay, you'll get back to the grind, you'll get back to all the story quests or side quests or whatever, and you will be amazed on how much is into this little cartridge or digital download or anything. You'd be
Mhm.
like, Monolith Soft went snapped off. They went overboard. But they
Well, I
became
think
but that's
I
the
th
stuff that people wanted.
yeah, and I think especially I think Nintendo has you look at the studios that they own, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like well, maybe towards the end of last generation, I would say. I think the first kind of glimpses of this you see with Breath of the Wild, but I also think, you know, there were other games towards the end or middle of that generation, like uh you really started to see Nintendo kind of loosen their restraints a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because I think they knew they needed to change even if they didn't want to internally. And so you get something like Xenoblade Chronicles 2 from Monolith, which makes that series, oh, where's the first one? I want to try this first one. And then the definitive edition comes out and sells more than 2. And then you get 3, which is just this monster game that now has made this a full-blown franchise for Nintendo. Or you see
Right.
the way that Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have captured people. I mean, even something like Mario Odyssey, which is just a super high quality 3D Mario game
Mm-hmm.
that changes just enough of the mechanics and has this these really intricate worlds to explore, captures people, right? And
Yeah.
then alongside these new experiences, you put out, you know, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is, yes, it's a port of Mario Kart 8, but you revamp the battle system, which makes, you know, makes that mode more fun. You put out a ton of free updates. That's more fun. Then you put out this massive DLC, 48 new tracks of like remade classics. You put out some of the mobile levels, which I would argue are the weakest
and
of all of
and
them. But
and
then
like
you
you
also
said,
put out new,
and like you said earlier, Corey, if you got in that stuff, you get that stuff for free.
yeah. And then like they also choose the right partners to work on franchises, right?
Hmm.
Like you look at Mercury Steam and Metroid Dread, right? Obviously, Samus Returns for the 3DS was a proving ground for them, and Nintendo liked what they put out, and so they gave them the keys to this, you know, long awaited, long rumored, legendary Metroid Dread, and it turns out to be the best Metroid game maybe ever, arguably. And then you see them working with Koei Tecmo on Fire Emblem Three Houses. They put a
And
new spin on this franchise that was rebirthed from intelligent systems, really with Awakening,
yeah,
and then you take it to the next level with Koei Tecmo, and they see things like Persona and these social link type things really making sense in this game. Uh,
it just the storytelling and Three Houses just grabbed everybody. People were replaying that game when they was. I just spent 50 hours in the game. I'm about to spend another 50 doing the other houses, and people were debating on who they love and stuff. Like
yeah,
that game put a hold on people.
yeah, and then you work with a company like Atlas to make Tokyo Mirage Sessions, which is
Hmm.
an incredible Persona like experience on the platform. And Nintendo's just made a lot of really smart decisions since, I would say, I mean, visibly since, 2015-ish. Uh so probably obviously before that, probably the last decade I would say of their development time or more. They've really made smart decisions and knowing when to re-release things, when to partner with the right people,
Hmm.
when to let their internal studios open up. And I think that's why people are going to continue to come back to Nintendo because Nintendo changes the game, no pun intended, when their back is against the wall, right? We saw that with GameCube, right? It didn't
Yeah,
sell well. They got more creative with their games, and then the Wii came out, and they really had to become creative, right? And then with the Wii U, right, they had to figure it out, and they gave us some of you know, the Switch probably has the greatest library of any Nintendo console, and
it literally helped developers become well known. Like Platinum Games, I yeah,
I would say
Bayonetta,
they would probably single-handedly probably saved Platinum Games
yeah.
at some point, with Bayonetta and Astral Chain and, even Star Fox Zero, even though that game wasn't great, they still, you know
But Platinum Games started getting more work literally after Bayonetta 2, like Near Automata, um, the core. Well, I would say the core games, but Teenage Mutant. Well, no, not Teenage Mutant. That was before. But like literally, when Bayonetta 2 came out, people really end up loving the series and really loving
Mhm,
Platinum Games, and they literally became popular. You mentioned Mercury Steam. They became popular with Samus Returns on 3DS, and now they're well known to the point where they were just like, if there's any 2D Metroid games, they trust Mercury Steam. Like gamers want to see more of their games, more of their development for Nintendo if it comes to Metroid.
mhm,
And they would just like Retro could keep the Prime games, and hopefully we get a chance to do something else and stuff.
mhm.
Like it I think like just like you said, Nintendo was smart to work with a lot of companies and stuff. Like Koei Tecmo, they've been in the game with Nintendo since the Fire Emblem games. And regardless of what you think of other Metroid, that was a good start for them, for Tecmo and Nintendo to work together.
Mhm.
and everything. So it's amazing to see the Switch bring in gamers to show that when we partner up with people, we help them deliver their best. Yes, we go and check up on the games, we offer suggestions, but most of the time, if we're working with partners, we let them have free reign unless we come in and have some concerns and we need to change some stuff. They got a strong relationship with Way Forward. Now look at Way Forward. They're regardless of what you think about them, Way Forward is strong. They've been consistent. Yeah, they've been like hired help to work on games and stuff. But like Shantae, that series is theirs and it's well known. You
Mhm.
know.
Yeah. So to bring it all back before we wrap up this conversation, I just want to
Hmm.
say if Nintendo keeps doing what they've been doing, you know, honestly since the end of the Wii U's life cycle, and they keep moving games forward from a gameplay perspective, at the end of the day, gameplay is king. Nintendo is the master of budgeting for their games, of being
Hmm.
able to put out, smaller experiences when they need one to, while they work on the next Zelda or Mario or something. I think you're going to see I think you're going to see in the next, I would say, 5 years. Not you're not going to see this change overnight, but I think you're going to see a company like Sony look at Nintendo pumping out 6 to 10 first party games every year, regardless of who developed them or what type of first party game they are.
Hmm.
And they're going to look at that and be like, we didn't put out one single first party game this year, you know, or we only put out one first party game. And granted, PlayStation doesn't need it, right? The way that Nintendo relies on their first party, Sony doesn't. But at the same time, I'm sure Sony would love to put out a first party game every quarter or
Hmm.
every
Yeah.
half. Uh, so at the end of the day, I think with the way the industry is now, and budgets being super overblown and productions being super high and games taking 5 to 7 years to make or longer. I mean, you look at something like Suicide Squad, which took 9 years to make. Um, I think Nintendo's output is going to be the gold standard. And I think you're going to start seeing these companies kind of retract a little bit and be like, hey, and I think Microsoft is actually really great at putting out smaller experiences too,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, you look at Psychonauts, Pentiment, Grounded, uh, you
Hi-Fi
know,
Rush.
Hi-Fi Rush. They've been great at that, right? It's the AAA experiences that they're missing, and which I think we're going to start getting this year from them. But that's my stance. I think people will come back to Nintendo next gen because their library will be there. Nintendo will continuously put out first party games. They're going to support the indie space, which is Nintendo. The Switch, whether they market it or not, is the home of indies. It doesn't matter
Hmm.
what anybody says. And I think with this, if they have a little bit more power and able to have some onboard storage this time around, and what I'm reading about this Nvidia chip that they're using, and Nintendo's going to have a special console, right?
Yeah.
I feel in my heart of hearts that we look at the Wii U, right? And then you look at the Switch and you're like, that's what the Wii U should have been from the get-go, right?
Hmm.
But then the Switch was like, okay, this is the foundation of what we want to do moving forward. And so next generation, you're going to see Nintendo. It's going to be like the ultimate Nintendo console. I feel like they're going to get everything right. I have it. I feel really good about Nintendo trying to get everything right on the next console.
I think they're gonna get it right, but I think it's gonna take a year after the next
Oh,
console release.
yeah, no,
You know.
I think you got a lot, and the stuff I'm talking about is like this is like a 12 to 24 month. Hey, let's get
Hmm.
our console out. let's launch some games. Let's make sure everybody's accounts sync, and their library is correct, and their expansion pass stuff carries over. Let's get through that launch window and be like, okay, the foundation of this console is set. Now let's, with a console update the Nintendo Switch ID stuff, right?
Yes.
With this console update, let's whenever the next Mario Kart or Smash or F-Zero multiplayer experience comes out, Splatoon 4, let's make sure our online functionality is maybe not perfect, because it's never perfect, but like, you know, good to go, so people don't lose connections
Right.
before Splatoon 4 comes out.
and
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 then
and to go and I agree with you, Corey. For the online section, they know they gotta make this strong because Call of Duty is coming to your system,
Mhm.
and it needs a
That's
strong
another thing.
online connection.
And it's not just Call of Duty. Like, you could potentially get Diablo 4. You could get,
Mm-hmm.
Overwatch 2 is still, regardless of what people say, Overwatch 2 is still really big. Microsoft, Minecraft is still big. Microsoft's going to start bringing some of these multiplayer games. Sea of Thieves, they're going to start bringing these games over to your console. You better be ready for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot of potential. Fortnite's still huge. Disney's new, Epic Universe thing that they're building is going to be huge. Uh, there's a lot of multiplayer experiences that could be coming to your console and could potentially be huge on your console, because they can play it in handheld mode. They can play it anywhere.
Right.
You better be ready.
And Nintendo gotta. You cannot just think of Japan. You are so big now. You have to think about
I mean, with
global.
the theme parks and the movies and the shows
Mm.
on TV, Nintendo is a global brand. I know they're
Yeah.
so focused on Japan and how people utilize their consoles in Japan. I think this generation, they're finally opening up, and they know they are a global company. They are the
Yeah.
Disney of video games,
Yeah.
right? Whether
Yeah.
people admit it or not, depending on how you feel about Disney or not, they are the Disney of video games. They have experiences for everybody. They want
Mm-hmm.
everybody to feel the magic in their consoles, in their theme parks, in their movies. Nintendo is hitting their Disney status right now, and they
Yeah.
need to take advantage of it.
Like they're good at local online. Like I mean, just like you with somebody with their other Switch, you guys like go like you connect and play like that because of the 3DS and DS, like the handheld experience and all of that. But now, since a lot of gaming is online focused and not so much live service and games as a service, not so much that stuff, but just like multiplayer modes that you could be able to play with people around the world. It has to be strong, and Nintendo has
Mhm.
to come with it. That I mean, and it's going to be a concern, but they have to make sure that look, you just cannot think of Japan. You got to think of America and Europe on how people are gaming, and you see that they're always online doing some sort of gaming. So you got to make sure your technology is up to snuff to do that. To
Mhm.
even to meet up to the requirements, match it, or be able to take notes and be like, okay, how can we make this greater than what we already have?
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, even things you don't think about, and I know we're gonna wrap it up, but
Hmm.
like things you don't think about, like even something like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, or if Microsoft decides to revive Guitar Hero or something at that point, or um, just some of these basic multiplayer experiences,
Hmm.
are people love to play these games. Like, that was the revolution. You can play console games on the go. And like we talked about how like the Vita was almost there, right? They were almost there. It was the memory card and the back touchpad, and the Vita had a lot of issues, but it was almost there. And the Vita walked so the Switch could run. And we talked about that on the Indies episode that we did of Expansion Pass. And
Yeah.
we're talking about it now. And you know, it's time. Like, Nintendo always feels behind. It is time to not be behind. We're taking that technical sacrifice so we can have the hybrid console. Make sure your other stuff works so it doesn't feel like an archaic piece of machinery. That's all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
I mean, they brought in the players for back to Nintendo. So now you got to prove to
mhm.
those people why they
Yeah,
should stay.
yeah,
And I believe Nintendo could do it.
yeah. I think as much as I loved, the era of Reggie and Iwata,
Mm-hmm.
right? This era of Nintendo seems to know they seem to be knowledgeable of what's happening now, right?
Yeah.
And they are merging the legacy with the innovation and technology of now, and they seem to really know what they're doing. And so I have a lot of faith in Furukawa. I have a lot of faith in Doug Bowser, whatever decisions he's allowed to make or is making. And I think we are about to see a Nintendo that we haven't seen before, which is
Yes.
exactly what we saw with the Switch launch and everything after that. I think we're about to see a Nintendo that we have never seen before, and that makes me really excited.
Yes. Well, everybody, that's gonna be it for this Nintendo Expression Pass. That do let us know if if you came back to Nintendo, not just our podcast, but
Yes,
we
welcome
love
to our
you.
podcast, everybody.
Yes. But yeah, we want to know if Nintendo grab your attention and made you a believer on why their games are just amazing, just phenomenal, and you know why they are important to the gaming industry worldwide. But yeah, everybody, have a great week, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time on Nintendo Expansion Pass. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye. If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dirrig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.